Hey everybody, good to see you back. I decided to do this particular video before I start my series on the Mueller investigation because Trump got in basically on this idea of America first. America first, make America great again. So for those of us in the rest of the world, we found this extraordinary because it's always been, since the Second World War, America first. So in terms of what culture and media we consume, there's a cultural imperialism around American material. So that if you're growing up in Cairo or Budapest or Sydney, you're exposed to American ideas, American language, different accents. And so in that sense, America has been first. But also in terms of the trade deals, you know, the first thing he said is he'd rip up these trade deals that were bad for America. Now again, for the rest of the world, we were going, because all these trade deals favoured America. He was just actually too dumb to read them, and he didn't need to because he could just say they were bad and replace them. So whether it's NAFTA or more particularly what affects Australia was the Trans-Pacific Partnership. Now Obama had put a lot of effort into it. A lot of countries were involved in the Pacific Rim, but there were also a lot of protests. And why were there protests in Australia, New Zealand, the Philippines, Japan? The protests were because it gave America this huge advantage. So how the hell he came up with the idea that these deals weren't in America's best interest is truly a mystery. So I just want to explain that before I go into this reading, which is basically about Trump's isolationism and what he means by America first, and so what it means for America and the rest of us. So I thought I'd do it in two parts, what it means for America and what it means for the rest of the world. Okay, so let's get into it now. Trump's agenda and America first. Trump's agenda, America first. Trump's agenda, America first. So I'll adjust the screen. The lighting might be a bit weird on this video because I'm recording it outside. Okay, we always start with a signifying card, the Knight of Wands. So what that means is it's a figure charging forth. It's a Wands figure representing willpower. But if you look at the actual sort of position of the horse and the rider, if you look at it quickly, it's about great movement and speed and no nonsense and charging in. But when you look a little bit closer, the horse is being reined in and the rider's sort of a bit nervous. So although he actually got over the line with a lot of voters by promising this America First nonsense, I think other people like the big banks and the stock market gurus and so forth are swallowing a bit of bile because they know in their gut it can't happen. So that's his signifying reading. So now we're going forward with the American cards. I'll just lay those out. Yeah. The first one is the Four of Cups, and it's about re-evaluating the values going on. So that's what he promised. We're no longer going to keep giving to the rest of the world. We're revisiting that. So it could also mean that people are starting in America itself to realize, oh, I see, there are supply chains in the world. So that means that if you say we only want American steel and bring back American steel jobs, that's not going to work because it can't be done at a competitive price. Why can't it be done at a competitive price? Well, it can't be done because of capitalism back in the 80s and 90s that forced globalism and globalization on the world, which was about getting cheapest resources and workers in other countries. So they're not going to bring back American steel. They're going to buy cheap steel from somewhere else to put in their product. So this card could have many meanings at this point, re-evaluating what this means, America First. This is the Six of Wands. We've got more wands coming up here. So wands, 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 striking out, no nonsense. This card represents a leader in that fight. I'm wondering, in a way, if this isn't Bannon. Could be someone younger, but it could, in the context of this reading, represent Steve Bannon, because he was very much in Trump's ear about this stuff of America First. It's also, I think, related to this next card. So this one is about believing the ideas, fresh ideas, a new start, America First, let's do it. Of course it's appealing. But it's side by side with the moon and deception. And so for me, it's about how this actually deceived the public. It deceived the public in many ways. The first of which is it came with a whole posse of ideas about immigration, the wall, being down on Mexicans. Now, I'm sorry, America, but you won't have anyone to pick your agricultural products if you get rid of the cheap American and Central American, the Central American laborers, Mexico, Honduras, Ecuador, and so on, who come and pick your food for $3 an hour or $2 an hour. Americans are not going to do that. So this is part of this mythology, jobs for Americans. So if you put these together, this is the face of the idea, which sounds really good and fresh and new. And this is saying, oh dear, it can't actually quite happen the way we were promised it was going to happen. And this card, the hard-working card, the martyr card, to me says that Trump and the Republicans are going to keep pushing this line, pushing it uphill. It's a strange thing in America that as a first world country and such a huge, iconic country, the minimum wage, I worked in the States, many decades ago, and I couldn't believe how bad the wages were then. I couldn't believe the working conditions, even for white-collar workers, were so bad. I mean, the minimum wage now is a pittance, So people have bought that line. Okay, so I'm going to move now to what America First, as an ideology, as a mantra, as a promise, how that gets viewed in the rest of the world. Well, the Emperor, yes, we'll just lay out the cards here. Yeah, Trump. They see it as driven by Trump. You might be pleased and relieved to know, I think most people in the rest of the world don't actually think it's all Americans doing this, who are as naive as this. There'll be some on the alt-right everywhere who also agree with it because it's happening in other countries. But although they are incrementally growing in number, they're still a minority. So this is the Trump card, the Emperor, and I think the rest of the world is very clear that this is a Trump-driven agenda. They understand that he's in bed with big business. This is a very self-satisfied merchant. They understand that big business will pretend to go along with him for a while. They're emotionally disconnected from the heartland and the people with the cups, but they'll go along with it. And that has kept the stock market really buoyant. Trump's been lucky that the big banks and the big financial gurus have decided to go with this fantasy for now. And it's a very bullish market. I would think that's going to come undone next year, but that's another reading. So the rest of the world see it as being driven by Trump and being driven by big business. The Page of Wands now in this third position, I think in the context of the rest of the world, this is saying, please God, let our country not get sucked into this madness. It's a fight, if you like, for sanity. It's a fight for presenting a good, strong case that cutting yourself off, as the UK has done with Brexit, and as Trump is intending to do with America, it actually ends up crippling markets, driving wages under, and also the average worker who's poorly paid in the UK or America. If those tariffs are put on all those products, they'll have to pay $2,000 for a washing machine, they'll have to pay $40 for a t-shirt. They haven't got the funds to do that. Most people haven't got the education to actually put together the complications and ramifications of this sort of simplistic Bannon-driven policy, right? So this is the voice of reason, if you like, in other countries. But lest we forget, other countries now are also being ruled by megalomaniacs, and they are being emboldened by the Trump experiment. These are the Russian oligarchs. These are the very rich people who have their funds in offshore accounts and so forth. I'd advise any of you who haven't to catch up with some articles on the Paradise Papers and other things, that Panama Papers rather, that are describing exactly these chains of big finance. So I'm not saying America's in a bad place and the rest of the world is just laughing and doing really well. We're not, because once again we are influenced by America. So this encourages the cold-hearted sort of big bosses to say, see, they're doing it in America, we should do it here. So it's a very dangerous point of view. So in this particular reading, I'm now going to do a 4-card outcome for this, which will be a mix of America and the world. Yes, there we go. So firstly, we have the Chariot, which is one of the major arcana, a really forceful card. So yes, Trump and his cronies and enablers will charge forth with this ridiculous idea. It's also twinned, as we know, with the deregulation. So you are saying to people in the Rust Belt and in other parts of impoverished America and the world, we're going to get you jobs again, and it's going to be great, and everything's going to be fine, and we're going to roll back these conditions on clean air and clean water. So what's going to happen in real life if they get away with this is, if you're a really poverty-stricken family in really crushingly poor areas of America, you're going to lose your Medicaid, you are going to be more exposed to the opioid crisis, you are not going to have a job, and there's every chance your kids will be born with 2 heads, because the river will be full of absolute toxins that can now roll right on in. So the Chariot is like forcing things through. So I know that might sound a bit facetious and sarcastic, but it actually represents an essential truth, which is the Chariot is charging forth and mowing down ordinary people. This will lead to conflict. It's not surprising. So people will be at war with themselves and each other. And I think that takes the shape too, that, say, people in coal mining towns, we have it in Australia, who were very anti the Green Party and anything environmental. It was like, let's dig another mine because mining means jobs and that makes us rich. Now, for 100 years, that really worked. And it was really hard to argue against it. But what started to happen, and I'm sure it's the same in the States and other countries, is as mines employ fewer and fewer people, more and more of mines are automated. They've got automatic trucks. They've got so many jobs that are automatic. So the miners who are left are fly-in, fly-out workers. So a town that was attached to a mine used to become a prosperous town because miners had come to town and spend all their money. Now they don't. They stay in miners' camps. They spend all their money in franchised outlets, making a handful of people super rich in the mines, and the towns go broke. Then they never remediate the mines. They always say they do, but they never do. And so people have been left with serious health problems. So going back to the movie ERIN, BROCKOVICH, which must be 25 years old now, mining towns, and that's other heavy industries as well, end up with the health problems. So I wasn't just being sarcastic before. It's a real chain of events that comes from deregulation. This is the card of commerce and trade. So this is the figure who's looking out across the ocean. How can I expand? So we had one of the wealthiest women in Australia is Gina Rinehart. She inherited an iron ore empire, and she went on record of saying that she's reluctant to pay Australian workers, Australian miners, the wages that they want. Why couldn't they be paid $2 a day like African miners? Charming. Charming. She could be a Trump. She even looks like a Trump. So at the end of this row, we have the Hermit. So the Hermit indicates withdrawing into a quieter space, but still shining a light on certain truths. So I need to draw some more cards now to actually get a feel for what the Hermit is implying in this reading that is about America first, but also that mentality. So it could be Australia first or UK first. It's a particular trope that runs through this anti-migrant, we want jobs for our own, when in fact they don't employ their own. And before I leave that theme, where does Donald Trump get his suits made? Well, judgment. They will be judged on this. They will be judged. People can be fooled for a little while, but not forever. They finally get it, you know. And people want to believe. Of course they want to believe, you know. And I truly think that even with Trump voters, they don't actually believe everything he said, and they even believe on some level he's a crude clown, but he's their clown. They really still believe he's batting for them. So he will be judged in the bigger picture by Moolah, by the international community, and by the normal people. The prevalence of money, money, money again. So on the one hand, you've got judgment, and it's going to be judging not just Trump, but a lot of these nepotistic pacts. It can be nepotistic in the sense of employing actual family members. This implies the 3 generations in a card. But it can also be cronyism. So in many countries, leaders or people who are in charge of departments who control tenders will do their best to get their friends in as well as their families. So there is a judgment pending on this practice of crony capitalism. A victory and a defeat. How cryptic. The cards don't want to give me a straight answer on this. There will be some victories, there will be some defeats. I'm going to go one more. The Queen of Wands. I'm going to make a bit of a leap with my interpretation of the Queen as this final card here. An older woman. And we've talked about the black cat before, and the throne, and so forth. It is wands, it is willpower. I think it's going to be a powerful woman who manages to articulate the hypocrisy of this sort of one-track idea of selling to the public. If you stick with big business, you'll do well. I'm hoping that's what this means. I'm going to cover myself here by saying it could be wishful thinking on my behalf. But in any event, what I can say definitely is a woman will play a significant role in setting the record straight about this hypocrisy and broken promises. Okay, guys, I'll leave it there. Bye.